Welcome back to I Got Board Game. It's Friday.
Woo! After a hiatus.
And we did not record last week, Labor Day weekend, because John was busy.
Yep.
Annual event that he
Mhm.
had fun with. So, but we're back this week, and I did post a little tease of what we will be talking about today, and someone did guess it. Kevin guessed it. And I was waiting till like yesterday to reply in case other people wanted to guess, but I told him he made a good guess yesterday. So, with that said, what we will be looking at today is ooh, nice picture. We'll be looking at
Olympians.
statues.
We'll be looking at the Olympians
Let me see
and the Egyptians
where's my let me see where my
and
picture.
Alexandria.
My picture is this one.
Ooh.
So today, what we were hinting at and had planned for is to do a second preview video. And this time we are previewing Seven Wonders, but not obviously the original game that you're looking at right now, which already came out years ago. But we will be previewing, will it move? Seven Wonders. Second
What does this
edition.
mean?
Second edition, which actually looks like this now. And so that's, yeah, very good background, John.
Oh, I think
And
mine's mirrored, but cool.
and so, as this is a preview, we don't have this second edition. And as I mentioned in the Seven Wonders Duel review video we did even before this, I have not played the original Seven Wonders. John, you've played it,
Many,
right?
many, many years ago. So
Okay. And like a lot of times or a
no,
few times?
not many times.
Okay.
So I'm
both
pretty
of
unfamiliar with the game these days.
yeah, so both of us are unfamiliar with the game itself, but clearly, I mean, we've played Duel and we reviewed that. And so we know Seven Wonders is the original version that we mentioned that is essentially a drafting game, right? The big gateway game that introduced a lot of people to the drafting mechanic, and it could play up to 7 people. That was also kind of a selling point of it. It could get a lot of people into it. And so we're not going to be talking about how it plays, but we are going to just basically be going through a component comparison. What is the difference from the original one, which came out, I believe, around like 7, 8 years ago, I want to say, to the second edition that is releasing, it should be this month. It should be this month officially. And so you could get a copy of it soon if you find this interesting. And so to start, like I showed already, this is the original, and this is the second edition, which personally, I like how it looks a lot. It definitely got my attention when I learned about it like a month ago that it's coming out, and I was like, well, I never got into Seven Wonders. I definitely like Duel a lot, but the original one, I was kind of, I guess, like a little snobby about when we had friends when we were in Berkeley. One of our friends, Michelle. Shout out to Michelle if she ever watches this. I remember her actually, like, during a session when they were having people hang out and she was getting people to play a board game, she had Seven Wonders. And I was snobby about it because I was already getting into board games and I thought it was kind of too complicated as an introductory drafting game. For me, I always stuck to Sushi Go, which a lot of people who know me have probably tried that game from me as an introduction to drafting. So I was snobby about it. I didn't dislike the game because I didn't even play it, but I just kind of conceptually thought it was a little too complicated to just be a drafting game. But then I really liked Duel late when it came out later. So seeing this now, I am interested and am thinking about getting this, especially with a revamped look and some graphic design changes, which I think look really nice too. And so we're going to start looking at some of the comparisons. in the following images, and some of the following images are from Miniature Market. They are not sponsoring me, but I will shout out to them because they are one of the online stores that I do get games from. And so they had these photos comparing some of the changes from the original Seven Wonders to the second edition. So this is how the components look now, but then we will look at, this is a picture of the cards, which also looks very vibrant and colorful, which I think was still kind of part of the original game and also what you see in Duel. But then going on to some of the new features or graphic design changes and such, we have this image of a before and after. And so this is the one of the cards, and then these are the different card backs for the 3 ages during the game. And so we can see it's an image of the school card, similar icons, the costs, artwork, and then different backs. So is there anything you would want to say about this, John, this difference?
Yeah, so I would say kind of first off with the look, obviously you can see the older version had more of like the best way I would say is maybe a rustic feel to it, kind of definitely hints at that older historic feel, right? You can see like they have the images of the philosopher busts in the artwork, kind of as a part of the background of the card. It does still use symbolism on the card, but there's more text on it versus you can see in the new version of the card, the after version, they change it to the direct symbology, which we talked about actually, and they probably took it from Seven Wonders Duel. Kind of that similar concept of, right, the academy and the study in that one, but to the school now in the new cards, it becomes just a direct symbol that doesn't associate to the name of the place, which makes it cleaner. It makes it a lot easier to see. You can also see how many players it allows to play. So on the one on the left, it's for 7 or more player, or it's a 7+, I believe, is for the amount of players when you use this card, versus on the new card, it's actually for if you have, I believe, at least 3 players, and then this card can be included in the draft of the game. And then, of course, the backs of the cards it's showing here, there's the 3 different colors. So in the original one, it looks like it's just 3 different colors, right, just to distinguish the ages. In the new version, it's actually associated with the colors of the past of Bronze Age, Silver Age, and Gold Age. So you actually do get the pseudo kind of development of, you know, the ages that pass within the historical context. So then, of course, it has a little glinty colors to it as well to give it that shine.
Oh, that's a good point of why they would choose that. And also, yeah, if you guys also see the Dice Towers video on this, Z Garcia also does a comparison video of this where he actually has this second edition product, and so he could show it a little more detail. And the cool thing that with what John was pointing out, this kind of bronze, silver, and gold back on the cards, like that's actually the finish on the cards in the second edition now, versus just, you know, kind of this brown, blue, and purple in the first edition. Second edition is actually like metallic-y edge and printing with a shiny bronze, silver, and gold on the backs of all those cards, which I thought was like super fancy looking, very sleek, especially with the contrast to the dark background on those cards. Yeah, so that looks so nice.
I think he had different words to say though, personally, right? Was he the
one? He thought it was kind of, Z might have said it was kind of gaudy looking or something, which I can I just like it. That's just fancy for cards, you know. It's like if you're looking at
shiny,
especially since it's the back of cards, right? Not like us who grew up with like Pokemon cards that are like hollow foil, you know, like those are obviously cool because it's like the front art's all shiny, but this is just like a consistent look back of the cards all being that nice looking. I think that's really nice. It's kind of like when people want to get, you know, fancy like poker cards, you know. It's like it's kind of that feel, I think, of what would draw you to these kind of cards and this look of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then also what you were pointing out, yeah, switching to the symbols, which seems like a design choice they learned with Seven Wonders Duel, right? Matching symbols instead of reading the names each time to see
Mm-hmm.
if it helps you get that building later on.
Yeah.
I think with that too is like the positioning of everything, right?
Yep.
Like the cost being down here, but then losing this kind of little edge on this side where the name of the actual card is, like putting the
Mm-hmm.
name on top. I think that's really smart because I think it's awkward when games have like the things written sideways when the rest of the card is held a certain way and read a certain direction, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that has been pointed out in the Dice Heart video is that kind of like with Seven Wonders Duel, when you get multiple cards, you kind of can stack them over each other
Mm-hmm.
so that you always have the name of that card on top and its symbols, and then that's just kind of cascading down. But then apparently in the first edition, since it was designed like this, you'd have to put the card into this shape here, this like quadrant of the card, and stagger it that way, which is just kind of weird, right? You're staggering both horizontally and vertically. And so I think it was really smart that they kind of made it more uniform and simplified in
Mm-hmm.
its shape and the direction orientation of the cards.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's also interesting because I think symbolically, because I do believe there was a couple of potential balance changes I heard with the
Mm.
new edition, is now that they shifted the symbology onto the top of the card in the new edition. So in the old edition, as we were just talking about, you overlay the card on the horizontal, kind of vertical horizontal section. So it's covering like the bottom right half of the card. That's also where they have the symbol of the Academy and Study. So if you're
Mm.
thinking about it from the gameplay standpoint, and this is assuming because it's been a very long time since I played, so I actually don't quite remember. But if you're overlaying a card on top of this card as you're building the tableau out, then you're covering up those words, right? The Academy
Mm.
of the Study, which kind of implies that you can only have one of those buildings for the future when you're
Mm.
playing it in maybe the original base game. But now having the symbology on the top, like in the new version, there might be multiple symbols that you can
Mm.
potentially utilize, and it's not being covered up on the card like in this case in this game. So that might have been also from an aesthetic standpoint, or both from an aesthetic standpoint, but also maybe even from a gameplay standpoint. It's actually kind of a cleanup of this archaic kind of rule when they originally
Mm.
designed the game. So, but that again, stipulation. I haven't played, so it's been a long time since I played. So
And yeah, as you also mentioned, yeah, I did hear there are some balance changes, like the cost of certain cards that are different, and even you pointed out like this probably means it's for a game of 7 players or more, where this is for when you're playing with 3 or more to include the card. And so that's kind of up to people who have played the game and are into it, and if that kind of the changing of costs and resource amounts of cards bothers you. But I think it's like it's such a light game, not a filler game necessarily, but a light game. Like I don't think people should be that intense about balance changing in a second edition.
until you talk to all the hardcore Seven Wonders, tournament players that watch your video now and now criticize you and never want to watch your videos
Yeah,
again.
who play the game like not by looking at cards but by memorizing how much they cost and what they do. Is like I just need to look at the color or the symbol on the card and I'll know what it
I
does.
just need to look at that face of Sophocles right there in the
But now you took
background.
his face off and you changed the cost. I can't remember that. The last thing I would point out here that's also graphic design difference is kind of with the older look of a lot of games, like there's this black border on the card, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad they got rid of that because I don't know, that makes me think back to like trading card games and Magic specifically, right? Where it's like the white border and the black borders, where it's like in a lot more modern games, especially ones that with cards, it's nice to see when they try to show more of the art, right, on the whole
Mm-hmm.
card, which is often called like full bleed or just full artwork version of the card. And so I do like, even though it's just like a little bigger, right? The artwork, it's nice. It's nice that it just, that's what they show you. And same with even the card backs, right? There's this black border, which seems unnecessary actually, right? To
Mhm.
have a black border on a background that's not really that important anyway. But they covered it with this nice, like shiny foil, bronze, silver, and
Mhm.
gold edges. So I think that's really nice. And so moving
Nice.
on, another small detail is they made it colorblind friendly by adding a little symbol on the building cards, I guess, that is supposed to represent the kind of card it is, right? Whether it's a green card, red, like the color, which fits with certain resources and such, which is nice. I mean, it's not like that's a big sell, I would say. But a lot of game and designers nowadays try to keep that in mind, different ways to make their games colorblind friendly, which is just a nice touch if they can pull it off, right? In a way that isn't too like out there, right? Like if they made the whole card textured a certain way, just so you'll know, that would be a little much. But just including a little symbol that could help. It might be a little annoying for people to actually memorize that if they are colorblind, right? In this game, when there's apparently, I guess, 7 different symbols for the 7 colors that are possible.
Mhm.
But it's still, I think, nicer to have than not to have.
Yep. And like, I mean, I don't think either of us are, so we can't really speak to that community, but I would also guess that because it is something they intentionally designed into the game, they probably heard enough feedback
Mm,
that it's
mm,
probably something. So it is,
mm,
overall, like, again, it seems to be a pretty small piece of the art of the game, and it doesn't take a lot of the card space or card kind of real estate to do that. And it's not, and while it's kind of arbitrary, at least it's there, right? And then
mm.
it's the same for every card in that one. So those players who are colorblind and such should find it pretty quick, I would guess,
Mm,
to figure out that symbology.
mm.
So
Okay, and then next we have a look at different card. This is pointing out the symbol
mhm.
chaining that you had pointed out, where instead of having the building name written on the bottom that it actually links to, it's switched it with the symbol that matches on that card when it pops up later, which is what
The
they seem to have
Jardins.
learned from Seven Wonders Duel.
Mhm. From
Sorry,
the
which
theatre to the
yeah,
Jardins.
this is different language version of the game. The other thing that has been pointed out, I don't know if I have images of it, but some of the symbols, like the common symbols for like resources or in this case victory points, has also been changed. I think in this case the victory point one is more of like the reef on the outside with a white inside and then the number. Where I think originally it was kind of like maybe like a white background with a reef and then the number. So it
Mhm.
just kind of, it's a switch to making it look, I think in a sense, a little more distinct than kind of following a lot of symbols that maybe are just put onto a white background, you know? It kind of makes the whole thing encompassed by the symbol itself.
Mhm.
And so it looks nicer.
Nice design.
But this chaining is, I think, a very smart move. A
Yeah.
very smart move. Because, yeah,
And again,
like,
and I think for as we just talked about and we showed in the Seven Wonders Duel, I think they learned from that game and they were like, yeah, we were smart when we did that in Seven Wonders Duel. Let's bring it over.
because yeah, I think in a lot of games, especially modern ones, like the switch to using more symbols than having cards or tokens or whatever with like lots of words people have to read. I mean it's a little sad to think like, oh, people are just too lazy to read, but it can slow things down when you're actually playing, right? Like when you can have a symbol, especially a symbol that is kind of clearly a good reminder of the action that it actually does, like a very functional symbol, like that can kind of keep the game flowing, right? Because you'll just see it when the card's played and you'll immediately know without having to read a whole sentence just to know the simple thing that it does. So switching to symbols is good. Symbology in games, not symbolism, symbology. And then this one, so in Seven Wonders, there are these big boards, which are the wonders,
Mhm.
right? That I guess you can, I mean, this is the part I don't know about the game, but that you can kind of go to or play cards on to get bonuses, I believe.
Mhm.
And so in the original, as you can see in this picture, The original was like this, and I think they were probably like were they cardboard? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
So, but it was kind of like a bigger board, and
Mhm.
there'd be one for each wonder. And so in the new edition, they made it bigger.
Mhm.
And the thing that I don't have a picture for, unfortunately, is that in the original, I believe there was like an A and a B side.
Mhm.
And so just kind of which side you want to play on, maybe a more advanced side. But in the second edition, they made a day and night side. And so the other side is actually the same artwork, but at night, which I think is cool because it's nice when you have such nice artwork to get more of it in the game,
Mhm.
right? So not only did they make it bigger on the board, a bigger board, so it's a bigger piece of artwork, then there's like a slightly altered version, which is the night
Mhm.
side.
Yeah.
And so I think it looks cool if you guys get to see a picture of it.
And in
Um,
that way, it also distinguishes, as you were saying, there's the A and B side. So the mechanics of the card between the two in the first version are different, right? Like there's different rewards or different ways of
hmm,
doing the things on the card, it seems like. But then on the back side, the artwork was the same, so you'd have to kind of read to interpret what is the difference between the two cards. But as you were saying, with not just, by using the artwork design as an additional kind of way of distinguishing, then it
hmm.
makes it very clearly a different, you know, to know which side you're actually using, right? And it makes it
And
very
I think it's
visually
a
easy to see,
and
right?
I think it's a nice way that it kind of just a little bit more thinking on like theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a huge theme, not directly related to the wonders of the ancient world or stuff like that, but it is, in a sense, a little more meaningful than just A or B, right?
Yeah,
Because
you
that's just
sun
very
worshiper,
generic.
you worshiper of Ra, not of Horus.
But but it's like it just kind of makes sense and fits, right? Like you think of ancient times, the time it took to build these, and it's like, oh, okay, passing of seasons, time, sure, why not make a day and night version?
Mhm,
Just a really
mhm,
small detail, but it's just a little step more than A or B.
mhm, mhm,
And then obviously we've talked about the cards already. But then also on the boards, there is, I mean, it's hard to see here because my picture is too small, but there is also kind of the spots where cards can be played. They're also designed differently, right? Where
mhm,
in the old version, I do actually think it looks like an older game, where it's like you just have this opaque part of the board, which is indicating where cards go, right? With the symbols on it, bonuses and such. But then here, it's like it's just a little more stylish that they went with a dark color versus this light opaque color that kind of really stands out on the board in the artwork. This darker one is obviously visible, but it doesn't kind of necessarily just block your view of the art. You know what I
mhm,
mean?
mhm. Yeah.
So I even think that's a smarter choice of just making it a little like easier on the eyes than just this bright opaque part. Which, I mean, when I'm looking at the original one, like that's what I see first, right? Like, oh, there's these like four slots on the bottom. Where this one's like I can actually look at the artwork and then notice, oh, okay, yeah, and then there's this functional part of it at the bottom.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's my opinion on that.
And I think it's also overall, if you look at it, it's just done a lot cleaner. So top right, you can see as we were talking about the day night difference cycle versus like I think it just saying like A or side A instead
Hmm.
or location A.
Hmm.
And then in the top left, it's a little cleaner. So in the artwork in the original, it's just a big gray box with the
Hmm.
symbol within it. In the new one, they streamline it a little bit more, where it's not just a box, but it's kind of the banner with a little
Hmm.
drop
Hmm.
down of it. So it does look aesthetically slightly more pleasing, and it really focuses on what you need to pay attention to. And you get more artwork, as we were saying. And then in the bottom, you were saying in terms of the coloring, I think the after version, the new version, the yellow background is actually, this is even like an art design thing. It's like because it's this light yellow and the card itself actually has a pretty light look to it. It kind of is a little hard on the eyes, right? Just looking at it for a bit. But on the second one, the after one, it's darker and it's more intentionally clear because the symbols themselves, right? Like the victory point symbols, the
Hmm.
number
Hmm.
symbols are
Hmm.
brighter. by nature, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
on the other artwork. So by having a darker background, it really pops out what you like for the gameplay, what you should be focusing on. And then
Mm-hmm.
another
Mm-hmm.
nice art difference is the payments that you have to do, or what it looks like the payments are. In the
Mm-hmm.
first artwork, it's just in the box and it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
within the box. So it's kind of like, wait, what am I supposed to do with that number? Like if you play the game, you'll figure it out, but it's kind of like it's just there. Versus in the second edition, it has more of that look of the payment resources, like it looks like on the normal buying cards, right? Where it's the small symbols and
Mm-hmm.
it's actually separated. So then it's like it's not something I'm gonna get, right? Because in the first one, it's kind of in the same area of what you earn. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it kind of plays in that same spot, but now it's very clearly like this is a different box, that you're not earning these things, you're doing something else, which
Mm-hmm.
again likely is paying, because we kind of just assuming how this game works, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you got to pay something to get this. So that's also a nice design that you can kind of intuitively, it feels like you can intuitively pick that up, versus in the first one that's not the most intuitive pickup.
Oh,
So,
Melissa would be so proud of us pointing out this graphic design stuff. Shout out to our friend Melissa who does graphic design,
and
and
who
she's
knows if
really
she's
good at it.
watching, ever watch this too.
Yeah, I hope you watch this, Melissa, and then you let us know that you watched it and what we
Right,
say wrong about
hashtag
graphic
called
design.
out.
And I think the last, oh no, that was the last image, actually. I think, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And so actually, just a few other things that I don't have pictures for necessarily. Actually, there's one of my earlier pictures. Well, at least in this picture, something I did hear was that the coin tokens that were these cardboard punch outs, it looks like they're actually the same, which is
Mm.
kind of unfortunate. It's like they went through all the trouble of, getting like some new art, right? At least like the night side of those boards, getting to make it bigger, this new box cover, which actually I really like the colors on that one a lot.
Hmm.
And then even doing like the bronze, gold, silver foil shiny backs of all these cards, but the coins are still cardboard punch outs. It's like come on, just like include even just like nice plastic ones, like in what was that game we played before, Builders, right? That small tin game that has just very nice plastic money.
All the budget went into that gilding for those Ace cards. Got no money left over, man.
Like I think that would have made this like even greater if they made those like metal coins maybe. But that would actually, yeah, probably make it pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And I think the game is already kind of expensive, like maybe 40 or $50, the second edition. But yeah, even from this picture here, I think it looks so nice. And so that's why I am actually thinking that it's my chance to get in on Seven Wonders finally and see if I actually like it.
What's all
Probably
the
not as
hype
much as
about?
Duel, but maybe up there with Duel. It looks so nice. But yeah, there actually is one final thought I did want to share on this was I had heard or maybe read comments that some people are upset about the second edition of Seven Wonders because kind of the issue with any second edition that comes out of a game, it basically cuts off people who were into the first edition and already bought expansions for that, because Seven Wonders does have a few expansions: cities, uh, leaders, Armada, Babel. I think those are the four. But if people got those already and have like all of the Seven Wonders set, then none of the new stuff will work with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening with the second edition is that when it's coming out, which I said I think is this month, they're actually also doing second editions of like leaders, Armada, and cities, those first three expansions.
Expansions.
But then if they do even more new expansions for this based off the second edition, then none of those would work with the original first edition.
Yep.
So that's what kind of annoys some people, where it has happened to me before, like with a couple games, kind of like, for example, Imperial Settlers by Portal Games has a second edition, which is doing very well now and even plays very differently than the first one. But then it just means the first one won't get any more content. And so I that kind of bugged me, but because Imperial Settlers, the new version plays so differently than the first one, I'm kind of okay with it because I just enjoyed the first one for how it played, and am not as interested in like the art style and maybe even some of the simplifications with the newer version. But then with a game that is pretty much the exact same game, just reskinned, I can kind of get why that bugs people, but it looks so nice. I don't know your thoughts on games do that, John.
Never ran into the problem, so no problems with me.
Yeah, I mean it's less of an issue for me in this case too because like as I mentioned, I don't have the game, so it's like it's my chance to jump in on it, and it's a nice looking new version. It's like great, that just sounds great.
I would say maybe my only thing about that is like the whole concept is like ultimately it's thinking about supporting the company. Hopefully, right? The idea is about supporting the company where yes, you might have to rebuy the game, especially if they're going to be creating new content in the future. But you also have to think kind of it's kind of their way of thinking about it from an investment standpoint too. It's like these people put in a lot of time and effort in creating a game that you love so much. And they do need to they need to fund themselves. They need to find a way to pay for their company to be able to continue producing these games, continue producing this type of content in general. Now, if it's like the third or fourth time they've done an edition and it's kind of remains the same or largely the same, but it keeps being reskinned over and over or resold over and over, Skyrim, that's one thing. But if it's maybe like, I mean, Seven Wonders, as we said before, it's been many years since its original release and original production. And if they're planning on future expansions from this point on with this kind of reskin, and there is some slight balance changes, even when we were looking at the difference between the wonders, between the two cards, there were some notable differences of outcomes, of scores, or what you get from it. So there is some balancing that they have taken into consideration. So it's not literally a full reskin either. Then, and kind of with that thought is, if they're actually balancing things now, might they be balancing more stuff for future expansions? It could be, right, that hint of they will be creating new content for this game. And maybe you want to wait until they finally get that new content out because you still have the original to play, so you can keep playing the original, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. Just mainly as long as you don't keep reskinning games over and over, then it's probably okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this case, what actually does stand out a lot to me, not just the art, because I keep mentioning that, but the design, the graphic design choices, I think are important. Like, I think those are usually good reasons for a new edition, right? If it's something that makes certain parts of the game flow better, more functional, more easy to understand for your gamer, then it's obviously not the same as making a new game or even making an expansion, but it's cleaning it up in a lot of small ways. And I think uh, that is a pretty good reason, I think, for a game to have another edition. Like, for example, when I think of Pandemic and the new edition that came out, I really don't think that changed much aside from the look, like, and introducing the quarantine specialist, which I think is a broken character.
Hey,
Like,
quarantine's
well, that
important
character
these
that
days, man.
it makes the game too easy when I want a hard co-op game. But mostly it was the look, right? Like, none of the cities necessarily changed, the cards that you'll have to play with, the cards in the infection deck. And so I really thought that was kind of more just making it look nicer since the game finally got so big, which I thought was unnecessary. But that actually would be a case that kind of sucked for me because Pandemic being one of my favorite games, like, none of the new expansions work with my edition anymore, right?
Yep.
And so that was kind of, yeah, that did kind of suck when that actually happened years ago. But I
Fund the
also
behemoth. Fund the corporation.
but I think I also heard like reviews of the later expansions that they weren't that good. They're not like you have to get them. So me having my first edition and the first edition of the first expansion, I think was definitely enough. Like that's
Mhm.
the core stuff I would want for it. And so yeah, that case ended up not being that big of a deal.
If you want to play these second editions, just have that friend that comes over to play your game all the time buy the second edition. Easy. Then you don't have to waste money on your new edition, and you can still experience the second edition just fine.
But you know, like, but then like cleaning up a game, well, like what I thought of was actually Twilight Imperium, third edition to fourth edition, right? Which would also kind of be a debate between people who are really big into board games, like, oh, is third edition actually better or fourth edition? But like you can definitely see things they change, and either even like for such a heavy game like that, the rules and cleaning it up, making things a little more clearer, to yeah, graphic design stuff, how things are positioned, how much text there is versus symbols. And so even that kind of case, that was a fourth edition of a really heavy game, but I think it was a good move on them to kind of do that. So I'm a little more leaning toward that kind of situation with Seven Wonders Second Edition, that I think it makes changes to probably some, obviously the balancing, but maybe some of the rules and how it's written to make it simple, because they switch the symbols, which makes things simpler in certain ways, to having great artwork. And so yeah, I think it. I hope it is a kind of jumping on point for people to get into board games now that there's this kind of newer, sleeker version. And so the last bit. No, go ahead, John.
I was gonna say, and for yourself.
Yeah, for myself. I mean, I am still thinking about it, but I think I will probably end up getting it at some point, or you know, someone can send me a copy. Whoever's watching this. John.
Hey,
You're
I'm
the
not
only one.
watching this. I'm recording.
And so the last bit we'll do is, I mean, even though we're not reviewing the game, this is a preview. We will have John guess the rating and the weight of the game, of the first one, because obviously there's no ratings and such on this.
Wait, I think it's a 2.1,
2.1.
and rating is probably an 8.1.
Whoa. Okay, so we're gonna quickly look
I'm
at
just
Board Game
guessing. I
Geek.
have no idea.
If John gets this exactly right, I said I would get him a copy of the game.
Yay! It has to be exactly right, though.
Exactly
To
right.
the number of ratings, even. No.
Okay, so Seven Wonders on Board Game Geek. 2.3 weight. You're close. And
And 7.8.
7.8.
Also pretty close.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But you guessing 8, that's really high for it. I was like, that's.
8.1, yeah.
I
That
don't
was
think it
pretty
would
high.
cross an 8, but 7.8 is actually higher than I expected to, actually.
10 years, 2010, 10 years
Oh man,
ago.
it's been 10 years.
Anybody who's complaining about a second edition of this game has no right to complain. It's been 10 years since they released.
And
It's
as you can
fine.
see, Seven Wonders, this original version, right, is in the top 100 of all time, right? Number 51, which is solid, especially since it's kind of the, like I mentioned, the gateway game introduction to drafting for a lot of people, and especially as a game that's made it to the mainstream, right? Like you can get this at Target, at probably Walmart, you know, those kind of stores. And then number 6, family game of all time. Wow. Pretty solid, pretty solid.
Yeah.
So John did not get it right. But no, pretty close, pretty close. And so with that,
I'll take the consolation prize that you'll send over. A pack of cards from the game? No.
a used copy of the first edition that I find somewhere.
Yeah.
And so with that, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this gave you an idea of what to expect with the second edition of Seven Wonders, especially for those of you who have played Seven Wonders before. And if you found this helpful, please share this video with your friends. And until next time, we will see you then. Bye.
Peace.